community wants. So, how are you guys? All good?
All good, all good. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Okay, well, let me give you a bit of an update from us. So this week, spend lots of my time doing interviews for different first positions about we're looking to cover in Kleros, and also interviews for the fellowship, which we have this time, I think, a record of applications. We have tons of people applying. As you know, this time we are focusing the fellowship on a number of specific tracks that we think are important for the development of use cases of Kleros that we feel are important in times to come. So we have like tons of applications to NFT track. As you know, well, the rise of NFTs is going to bring a number of situations that will certainly require the use of Kleros for example, like plagiarism accusations, different conflicts regarding who owns an NFT, who was the owner of the content that was used to make the NFT. So basically everything that is today being handled by the internal claims management and copyright infringement systems of platforms like YouTube, for example, is going to be in the Web3 ecosystem. Is going to be sent to some decentralized solution, of which Kleros is really we expect it's going to be a very important system for this. So we got lots of people who apply to this specific track. People who want to research, for example, how to translate how to create the policies for NFT claims. What a potential NFT infringement court should look like in Kleros. What should be the policies? What should be the rules that people need to follow? So that's it's being a very important point of interest for a lot of people who apply to the fellowship. Some of them are actually lawyers and are also IP lawyers, and they are trying to understand how these two worlds would start to interact. Another applicant that I was very excited is a lawyer from the US, and she's researching also in the field of NFTs, but not what we think of NFTs typically as art or crypto punks or that, but she's interested in music, and so all of the managing claims over music ownership, which is very important actually in settings like YouTube in the Web2 ecosystem. Very excited about that one as well. So we have like lots of interest in NFTs, which is awesome. We have some people applying to the identity track, which is like how to improve the system that we have currently for proof of humanity. As you know, what proof of humanity is launched, it's already 8 months, I think, old, and works really well. It is about to reach 10,000 profiles, which is great. But well, this is the first iteration, and we also wanted to incentivize people doing specific research on the ways to potentially improve the crypto economics or the word that people have to say to register, or how to better detect duplicates, etc. So there is people that are going to do research on that. Then we got also a couple of applications to the governance track. So this is the use case of Kleros, of like as we sometimes call it, like Supreme Court as a service, where Kleros can resolve disputes happening in DAOs in the context of vote governance attacks, basically, or votes where some majority could potentially crash some deeply held values of of the community. And there was this really interesting talk that Jimmy gave at the Ethereum Paris conference a couple of months ago, where he was explaining why DAOs should have a constitution, and how this constitution should have some division of powers. I also like this DAO constitution DAO, which we're trying to buy the US constitution. So that's another track that is really interesting, and I'm very excited about. So we have like, I think some couple of dozens of applications. So we're trying to see who to accept. Of course, we would accept them all, but for us, for the team, it's also important that we can give them the support they want and they need to do the research they want to do. So unfortunately, our bandwidth is limited, so we just can take those who seem more promising. So lots of that this week. Then we are continuing with the incubator. This week we had the fourth workshop. This time was about user interfaces in the Web3. So the first workshop we did, the first three workshops which I gave to the teams that we accepted were about strategy, user interviews, and so prototyping and those things. And so after that, we had now last Tuesday, so yesterday, we had one of user interfaces, and the next one is going to be about mechanism design. Maybe I will let William tell you a bit of what his workshop is going to be, so I can rest of it.
Sure. So I'm going to briefly talk about some common traps in mechanism design. So I'm going to give a brief introduction to sort of game theory, playing small games, showing Nash equilibrium and such. But the most of the workshop is going to be things that can go wrong if you don't think about the subtle details of your mechanism design well enough. So if you have front running problems or oracles that can be manipulated, or if it becomes too profitable to vote to act randomly, and the ways these sort of manifest in potentially unexpected ways in complex cryptoeconomic systems, and things that one can do to try to either prevent them from being threats at all, or to give your governance process levers to be able to adjust to for example, make lazy strategies less profitable. So I'm looking forward to doing that and interacting with the incubator teams to hopefully help them give them some ideas of how they can improve their design.
Good. We got a bunch of questions of people, community members, who asked how can they access the content that we give in the workshops. We didn't expect that, but what I think we are going to do at some point, after maybe we finish with this incubator, this first cohort, is I guess we should record the workshops, not with the team, so we can give the content so anyone can use this method that we use at Kleros, and which I think it's useful, to try to better focus your protocol if you're building a protocol, and at least to think in an orderly way about all of the different aspects that you need to consider for one of these projects to be successful. So I think that we will soon do Kleros University, something like that. And also, different actors of the ecosystem, they also have education programs. So, like, yeah, for example, like Andreessen Horowitz, they have a crypto school. So yeah, so that's something we are going to do because people ask a lot about that. So we have that. So we have the fellowship, the incubator. Then, well, as you know, building the V2 of Kleros, because all of these things I mentioned at the beginning about the NFTs, for example, well, that only works is assuming that Kleros can, scale in basically become cheaper, and that what it is now, especially since we are aim at lower cost type of claims. So we have many times here discussed about V2. We already have a post written that is going to explain like more in detail the different aspects that we are developing. I mean, we already did a call with a community call with William where he explained the research aspects of V2. We're probably going to do, after we publish this post, another community call with probably with Clement, so he can explain how this is turning into the specs of what we are developing. So that is basically our main project at the moment is building this new version of the court. Then last week, in the community call we had Marvin. As you might, if you were not here, Marvin was a fellow of the last cohort, but he worked in a very specific type of research, which is how can Kleros be a tool for helping the Maker DAO onboard real world assets as collateral for the DAI. So, of course, we imagine a world of more tokens, and basically everything is going to become a token. And very big challenge is how you take all of these real world assets that are in the physical world and convert this into tokens, crypto assets, and what are the conditions under which one of these real world assets can or should be acceptable as an on-chain asset. There are all kinds of conditions that these assets need to comply regarding risk profile, regarding like legal aspects, and regarding jurisdictions. So because there are trillions and trillions in value in the off-chain assets that in the next coming years are going to start coming on-chain, and how do you curate this is going to be a very hard problem, and especially if you want to have these assets curated, if you want this asset to be the collateral of decentralized currency like the DAI, then you also need a decentralized method for doing the curation. So we think that Kleros can be this tool that can help curate and choose which assets comply with whatever requirements Maker has for onboarding them into the DAI as collateral. And whoever says DAI or Maker, then this can expand to whatever other protocol. So last year, actually not last year, it started last year, but so this year it ended. We had Marvin doing. Marvin is a really smart and really entrepreneurial securities lawyer from Canada. He's also the CEO at a company called Race that does also tokenization. And he researched exactly this: how could Kleros be this tool for transferring real-world assets into on-chain? This resulted in a report last week called. There is a recording that explains how this works, and now we are starting to coordinate with our friends at Maker to choose someone to basically to run a pilot of this. So this is another very important thing that happened this week. Then let me see. Oh no, maybe William, you want to have something about research, ongoing research.
Yeah, I mean, sort of now that the specs for V2 are in place, or like the research for V2 was done, and the specs are sort of being, analyzed, looked over, and preparing for the development of V2. I've gone back to like do more sort of abstract pure research that's kind of funded by our BPI grant from the French Public Investment Bank, that will help guide, sort of more general thoughts about crypto economics sort of ideas that can be related to future improvements for Kleros. And particularly as V2 is very modular, we'll be able to swap in voting and incentive systems into vote on new voting and incentive systems in sort of the modular framework of V2 without having to release a whole new version. So hopefully that, V2 will be more flexible to change with improving crypto economics. So in particular, I've been thinking a lot recently about kind of the nature of griefing factors. So if you're not familiar, this is an idea which is more or less due to Vitalik, of the idea of when in most circumstances in a crypto economic game, can you take on a cost in order to grief somebody else? So if you're kind of like a troll player, or maybe like an economic competitor or an adversary somehow that's willing to take a loss to do somebody else harm, what does that do, for example, to the equilibrium of the game? In what kinds of games are there intrinsically necessarily griefing factors? You can do sort of an equilibrium analysis and say that a game is kind of more or less stable if the equilibria don't change too much, if you have sort of troll players that are willing to grief at higher or lower levels. So I've been thinking about a lot about that, which again, it's sort of funded by this public grant we have, but will eventually result in an academic article, I hope, but will also guide us in thinking about where are there griefing opportunities in Kleros and how can they be minimized for future versions.
Yeah, William, now you remind me, I was going to ask you that we need to write the update about the research that was done lately for the BPI before we get into trouble. I will message you directly about that. It's fine. Sure. Nothing to worry. But yeah, so now for those who don't know about the BPI, so BPI is a French bank, innovation bank, and we have funding from them, of which is 2/3 is a grant and 1/3 is a loan for 750,000 euros. And the goal of this financing we got is to finance the development of version 2.0 of the core, basically all of the scalability work we have been doing, that William explains every week in the call. So this is there's financing from the French government for French bank, which is partially owned by government, for this. So that's the BPI. What's Banque Publique d'Investissement? I don't remember exactly what.
Banque Publique d'Investissement, I think.
Banque Publique d'Investissement. Okay, I was right then. So yeah. So we have that. Then let me think. Oh, one good thing, a really cool thing that happened this week, and I encourage you to watch I was at the panel with invited by Arbitech community. Arbitech is a community of arbitrators founded by Sophie Nappert. Well, you probably know her from Telegram, and she's a really well-known arbitrator. She's based in the UK, and she is very interested in technology, and she created this group called Arbitech, and they invited me to speak at a panel with Joe Rexinski, who is the legal futurist of Thomson Reuters. He basically is the guy who speaks to all of the Thomson Reuters clients, legal tech, and to all the law firms that the main law firms in the world, and he tries to understand what they are thinking about technology, and of course try to sell them Thomson Reuters products. So with him, who is really, really well-known legal tech researcher and communicator, and Primavera De Filippi, who of course she's a celebrity as the author of this famous book called Blockchain and the Law, and she's also a researcher in France. So we had a really interesting panel about law in the future of the metaverse, and how will disputes be resolved in the metaverse, which is starting to be among us now. When I started thinking the ideas that eventually led to Kleros, like 6 years ago, I think it was, I was at an interview, and they asked me, well, what is your vision of the use of crowdsourcing and the blockchain in the law? And I just answered something like, look, this is magic when we live in a metaverse. I didn't say metaverse. I said VR world, and then there is a dispute, and then maybe there is an AI like sending another AI to trial, and you're having maybe a panel of partially people and partially AIs in this VR world. And of course, this guy, that was Max Kaiser actually who interviewed me. That he was thinking I was crazy, but then, well, now this metaverse is, narrative is starting to become part of the mainstream, and especially since Facebook had this great idea to call itself Meta. So it's coming into the mainstream, and I don't imagine any other project being better suited than Kleros for being the justice system for the metaverse in the long run. So I really encourage you to watch that panel. It was really cool. It was like a really future oriented. So that is awesome. Also, another very cool thing. I'm sure Abir will have lots of thoughts about that. I don't know if you want to share something, but and
I'll definitely look into it and let you know.
Well, you are going to love it, especially since because of your ideas about gaming and arbitration, and so yeah, really, really encourage you to look at that.
Sure, I definitely will. And
yeah,
on my part, I've sort of been looking into experimental jury research projects and all, sort of trying to figure out how we can adapt them to a more crowdsourced, blockchain and anonymous-based research setup. So I'm really hoping that, within a year or two, Kleros and Ethereum costs in general go down a lot, so we can actually implement some of these experimental jury trials and see how they progress. I'm looking into, there's been a lot of experimental research on mock juries, but the biggest problem is they lack external validity, because most of the time these are conducted on students in schools or in universities by their professors. So I think that where Kleros stands out is that if we can implement jury research here, we will have research which is possibly the most externally valid in history, right? Because we can actually test this in real world conditions without the accompanying sort of ethical issues that you have if you're trying to, experiment with real life juries, with real life cases. So I'm really, so on my part, I'm actually, looking into and designing potential experiments we can run, but hopefully, costs go down by then, so that we can run like 4 or 5 elaborate ones and see how they go.
Looking forward to that. As you know, you have our full support in order to help you in whatever you need help. So looking forward.
Thanks a lot.
Good. I don't know, guys, if you have any question from my end. That's it for this week.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, well, bye guys. See you next week then.
Thanks a lot. Have fun with your Age of Empires thing.
No, I'm not playing tonight.
All right then.
That's 1 week I'm not going to lose.
All right, night.
Bye guys.
See you.